Hello, Tom LaVecchia here with the New Theory podcast. We just finished our interview, which will be up shortly, with Jeff Hoffman, serial entrepreneur who is involved with Priceline.com, Ubid.com, and now works for Color Jar. And that was arguably one of the best interviews, and I think we're about 70 deep. However, this next guest, without exception, is equally as strong in his space because we weigh entrepreneurs not just by their financial value, but what the value they offer for their respective community. We have Rocky Romanella on the line. Rocky, how you doing today?
Hey, Tom, it's great to be here. Doing well, and look forward to talking to you and your audience.
Yeah, so Rocky is an author, and then what is it? Lug nuts? What is it, Rocky?
All right, so the name of my book is Tighten the Lug Nuts. It's Principles of Balanced Leadership.
Love it. All right. So Rocky and I are talking a bit offline, but I don't want to lose any of the essence. All right, Rocky, we like to start out. Give us your formative years. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And what makes you you?
Well, let's see. We started out June 15th, 1976. I grew up in Woodbridge, New Jersey, exit 11 on the turnpike for all you Jersey folks out there.
That's right.
And my dad, rest his soul, said, one of my children's going to college. It's you're the oldest, but we got no money. So I attended St. John's University, Staten Island campus, which at that time was predominantly a commuter college. And since I was paying my way through school, I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to work at UPS as a part-time package handler, a loader, and unloader. And UPS in those early days had a kind of an entry-level program of a tuition reimbursement kind of program. It wasn't really to what it exists today, but it was an infancy reimbursement program. So I took advantage of it. And so I worked there during college, and then they also had a promotion from within policy that I was the recipient of. And so through my 36 years at UPS, I worked my way up through the organization and moved 9 times with UPS across the country, starting out in Jersey and Edison, and then we moved to Chicago. I was in the 43rd Street, New York facility, Syracuse, New York. Then we went to the international state of Des Moines, Iowa. So we really enjoyed being in Des Moines, Iowa. And you can imagine, Tom, guy by the name of Rocky Romanella, my number one question in Des Moines was, are you in a witness protection program?
That's right.
People are like, how'd you get here?
That's right.
But we loved Des Moines, we loved Iowa, and then we moved to Southern California, Atlanta, the corporate office for UPS, then Philadelphia. Then I ended my career at UPS in Atlanta, retired from UPS, and then took a job as the CEO, a board member of a publicly traded telecom company, and we sold that to private equity, and now I'm doing started this company, 360 Management Services. We have 3 legs of our stool. We do public speaking, keynote speaking, of which I do predominantly, leadership training, and then we have a process improvement consulting side of our business. So I guess what it really comes down to, Tom, is I learned that following my wife around ShopRite after retirement wasn't such a good idea for me. So I keep myself busy.
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot to absorb there. So we have some parallels where I grew up in Roseville Park, New Jersey, not too far from where you grew up.
Oh yeah.
Italian parents, get a job, and I worked at a company called Sharing Plow, which got which got bought out by Merck, and it was around the corner from the old UPS in Kenilworth. But with that being said, is they paid for my school, and it was a similar deal. And I didn't stay there 36 years. I stayed there 15 years. But like guys like us, we were supposed to go to these companies and eventually be born in the corporate cemetery. So obviously you had a great career at UPS. You probably still bleed brown, which I love, right? Because I do have a tie into UPS, which we'll talk about in a minute. But with that being said, though, why the corporate thing run its course? Did you get pushed out? Like what happened where you just didn't stay on there for maybe the tail end of your career versus leaving to start your own entrepreneurial venture?
Well, I traveled a lot. I was 55, 36, and my last assignment was in Atlanta. My whole family's up here in New Jersey, and so it just felt like a good time for me to leave. And then, frankly, I felt like I had accomplished a lot of great things at UPS. Nice. But, there's also the next generation of UPSers. And so when the opportunity presented itself to be the CEO of a company right here in Pennsylvania, Blue Bell, Pennsylvania, I said, you know what? What a great opportunity for me to put into practice some of the things I learned at UPS, as well as some of the the values and some of the things that I hold, sacred in terms of leadership and things that I always thought about. Well, let's face it, when you worked at Sharon Plow there, you drive home at night thinking, well, if I ran this company, this is what I would do. So
Yeah.
I felt like the opportunity presented itself as CEO. And so I took that I took that role and enjoyed that. And we moved the company to a good place. And then that had a sale, which was good for the company. And then at that point, I said, you know what, I'm still too young, got too much energy and enthusiasm to just stay retired. So I thought, why not give back if I could? I think a legacy is such an important part. Did you leave it a little better place than you found it? Are people better because of their time with you? Are your customers better because of their engagement with you? And for me, this legacy concept is so important. And so I felt like, can I leave things a little bit better? Can I take some of the things I learned and help other people? And that's what was sort of the emphasis behind the book, as well as this concept of the keynote speaking and leadership training.
Love it. All right. Okay, I do want to step back a quick minute though. So I'm assuming you had an opportunity to leave. UPS probably had a good situation there. Relocate, become CEO of this new company. Now, in retrospect, and I don't know if you're bound to anything, so speak to what you can. Were you kind of brought in to, be the CEO, build it up with a plan to exit, or did you go in, thought you were going to be there longer, and then just an exit came up as an opportunity? Walk us through that.
Okay, I can tell you it's a publicly traded company, so I can give you what I can legally tell you.
Yes.
So I was brought in because it was a series of acquisitions that were never really fully done well, and the synergy savings were never really gained because, as you know, on acquisitions, when you start to integrate, the synergy savings comes in your ability to kind of build this one brand, one vision, and one company from a series of acquisitions. And so they were struggling with that, and growth couldn't be attained any longer through acquisitions. They really needed to grow a sales force. And those are kind of two areas that I really have some really good expertise in: building a corporate culture, building high performance teams, and also kind of putting together this one brand, one vision, and one company concept. Well, unfortunately, during this process, early on in my tenure there, we have an unfortunate incident, and so now we've got to disclose some irregularities, and so now we have to kind of go through this difficulty. As you know, as a publicly traded company, you've got to go through a series of disclosures, and then you have to go through the forensic accounting and all those kind of things. And so the goal was to shepherd the company to a good location and be able to put it on stable financial grounds. And so I chose to stay, even though the situation that was uncovered happened well before me, because the feeling was if I left, the company may not make it, and the financing may not come through, because now I was leaving as the CEO. And so I chose to stay because there was 3,000 people there that really did nothing wrong. They were good people, hardworking individuals. But unfortunately, this situation, when it was uncovered, we had to do the right thing. We had to make the tough choices. We had to disclose properly, and then fix the financing, which we did. And then once we shepherded the company to a good location and then sold it to private equity, it went to a private company versus a public company. It's doing very well today. It's a good company, but it was a good time for me to leave. But no, my intention was to stay there, help it grow, maybe, get it to a next level as an organization. But unfortunately, these situations happen. And then, to be frank with you, Tom, it's how you play the hand you're dealt more than anything else in life.
True. All right. And then, so you did that for a bit, had an exit, hopefully it was profitable. Then you decided to hang your own shingle, because CEO is good, but you're now a founder, which is a different set of muscles. Was it something you were prepared for, working in corporate and being a CEO, or when you went into a true entrepreneurial situation, it kind of smacked you in the face? Walk through that specific experience with your current firm.
It's a little bit of both. The one thing I would say, the preparation I had that was different than I think some other people may have is, and I think you and I maybe talked about this offline, is so during my tenure at UPS, I had the opportunity to work on the integration of some of UPS's acquisition, and the one that really, I think, gave me some of the best training, some of the best opportunities. I met some of the finest people was when UPS purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and then rebranded to the UPS store. I got the opportunity to work with over 3,000 entrepreneurs. To me, that was the greatest experience. You meet some of the finest people you're ever going to meet. I mean, these are individuals. You really understand P&L when you truly work with an entrepreneur, small business entrepreneur. Because, in big companies, people can say they have P&L, profit and loss responsibilities. But an entrepreneur has the ultimate P&L responsibility. At night, they hit that cash register, the drawer opens, they pay their people, they pay their vendors, and what's left is what they take home for their family. That's a pure P&L responsibility.
Yep.
And you really learn that from them, right? You see how they go about their business, how when they, in my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, I talk about this concept of balanced leadership. You think like a customer, you feel like a valued individual, but you act like an owner. Well, those entrepreneurs taught me really what it meant to be an owner of a business, right? In their world, they have to ask questions of themselves. Okay, I'm writing this out of my personal checking account. I'm sorry. Would I do this? Well, in big companies like UPS or Shearing Plow, you always have that big company behind you, right? They, a great balance sheet with a lot of cash on it, maybe. Well, as an entrepreneur, so I had some preparation from watching them, but that's the hard part, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you sometimes just can't overwork. You just can't outwork things. Like in a big company, you sometimes say, "Well, I'm just going to put my head down and chop wood, and I'll outwork it." Well, as a business owner, you sometimes just can't outwork things. You got to kind of be like that little Roomba vacuum. You bounce into one wall, but you can't stop there because your business will go out of business. So you got to bounce around and go to something else. You got to look at something differently. Maybe it's a different approach. Maybe it's you take a step back and take a deep breath. You have a lot of those moments where you're thinking, are we going to make it? Am I going to make that next week? Am I going to make that next month? Is this really what I should be doing? And so I think that those feelings you generally don't get in a large corporation. So that's what you got to really, I think, work through is how do you maintain that level of energy, enthusiasm for what because you were enthusiastic when you started the business, but 6 or 9 months in, if it's not going the way you want, can you still maintain that level of enthusiasm? Do you still have that same commitment? Can you still kind of muster up that energy to keep the train on the track and go forward?
All right, so I'm going to read your book. I didn't get to it, so I want to look into it more. But the thing is, I know UPS culture pretty decent, and being a UPS guy, you have to be the master of your process. However, by listening to you, you see more of a people guy. Now, everybody says it could be both, maybe, but if you think you're more of a process guy or a people guy, which is it, Rocky?
I'd say I'm a people guy that understands that the way for people to be successful is to have a good process. So in order for people to be successful, they have to be able to have a process, understand the process, because that's how you replicate good, right? Every UPS driver has a successful delivery because there's a process there. And so I think you put your people in a position to be successful by having good processes. So I think it's kind of the game plan, so to speak. It's sort of like although I'm a Giant fan, you can't help but look at the New England Patriots and say, you got to give them credit. They have a good organization and a good process. Well, if you think about it, Belichick brings in players. Every year there's some new player that has to come in because of injury or something, and they still win because of the process. So he has good players. He manages those players, understands them, but puts them in a good process to be successful. So that would be my answer. I believe in people. I think it's people that do the execution. You need to have good people, but you have to put them in a process to be successful.
Got it. All right. So you hung your own shingle. I think you said there's 3 stools to it. I believe you have a partner. Was this an existing business, or did you and your partner start from scratch?
No, we started from scratch, and so there's actually 5 of us.
Okay.
We all have a different discipline. There's an individual who has a finance background. Another gentleman has the logistics and supply chain. Chris Michelucci has. She's excellent from a writing perspective. Ed has marketing and sales, and so myself. And so the 5 of us bring a different discipline, and that's the concept of 360, a holistic view. We can take a look at things from a complete 360 view holistically and then put together. Because in my mind, there's a process, but then there's a communication of the process, or an education of the process. There's a way, you market to your people or you market to your external customers. But both there's a marketing sales piece there to get people to understand the process. So that's sort of the concept. And so we got together and just said, look, we're going to go out there and make a difference with small businesses. We don't want to be the kind of consulting company that gets in and spends the next 3 years there. It's kind of get in, get out, make a difference, execute, and then move on to another company.
Okay, so start your new firm, have 5 partners in the firm total, and you guys are growing. You wrote a book, which is great. Now, give me, what would you say is probably the biggest or most prevalent managerial mistake entrepreneurs make? What's like the glaring, like 101, you see it almost every day, mistake that entrepreneurs make from a leadership perspective?
Because growing up, we always heard this term, right? Aim for the moon or reach for the moon, and if you fall, it's the stars or it's the earth or whatever else. That saying we always heard. But I think that there has to be a reality check in the things that you do. So, for example, as an entrepreneur, do you have the working capital that can sustain you through a period of time? So if you believe that your break even is 9 months to a year, but you have enough working capital in case that 9 months to a year turns out to 14, 16, 18 months. Maybe there's a downturn in the economy. Maybe there's a change in the town that you live in. And, it started out, but, I remember I lived in Syracuse, New York for a while, and things were bustling until Carrier left. Well, then that changed the dynamics there. So you could have been an individual starting a business, and all of a sudden Carrier leaves, and now, wow, there's a vacuum that's created. And so, even though you're doing all the right things as a new business owner, so I think that you have to be able to put together a realistic plan. Maybe you're going to be a little aggressive, but don't be so aggressive with this kind of pie in the sky. We're gonna hit break even in 3 months, and then you're not prepared for the working capital you need to take care of your family as you're going through this longer cycle to hit break even, maybe. So I think that would be have good realistic goals that are attainable, so that you can have some success, you can feel good about yourself, you have the right working capital. You can put food on the table for your family, and your focus isn't today and tomorrow. Your focus is 3, 6, 9 months. You can never look 3, 6, 9 months if you don't have food on the table right now to feed your family.
True. And then so all right, because there's so many different moving parts here. Okay. So when you do your keynote addresses, what audience, who do you speak to normally? Is it, corporate that hires you to come in and speak to sales forces? Is it a medium, SMB that hires you to speak to their entire staff of 15 people? Who do you speak to when you do your keynotes?
I've had a really great diverse group, and so I've spoken to a group of 45, CIOs and chief security officers and CEOs, and here in New Jersey, as a matter of fact, to talk about security and those kind of things, to 450, 500 people in an association. And then, I also do small groups when we're talking about leadership training, leadership development, sales. So I can kind of run the gamut, but I would say on average, it's about 300 to 400 people in that range there. And it really is about the concept of leadership and your ability to impact or make a difference inside your organization.
Okay. Now, when you talk about an organization, and the folks that have been listening to this are millennials for the most part, and these are millennial entrepreneurs that are starting out. They have a little bit different take than you and I. I mean, I know, like, you probably believe in running lean, so do I. But millennials really run lean. They only spend on money that they need to. They are a lot of solopreneurs, not really necessarily entrepreneurs, and that's okay. But what do you think, or what do you believe, from your perspective, that what will make a millennial entrepreneur successful from a leadership perspective today in 2017 versus when you and I started out?
Well, I think that first of all, I believe, I know this may be a little contrary to what people talk about when it comes to winners. I'm a firm believer that they have so much promise and they have so much opportunity. I think that sometimes millennials get a bad rap. I mean, I look at it, my quick example would be, when I started working, if someone said to me, hey, do you need UPS or does UPS need you? I would say, no, I need UPS. And, that was my generation, right? And that next generation would be, well, no, UPS needs me because I bring so much to the table. But I think millennials are that generation that says, wait a second, let's think about this. We both need each other. And I think that's what makes them so prepared. They're prepared from a technology point of view. They're very inquisitive. They ask the right questions. And I think that that's what they need to keep doing. Ask the right questions. Challenge things not because you're being disrespectful or you're challenging their authority. No. They're not challenging it. They're asking good questions. Okay, why is this a good promotion for me? Or why is this a product that I should be doing? Or why is this happening as you're speaking with the vendor that you're going to potentially, let me just understand what you need and what I need and how do we come to that. So I think that they start so much more prepared than we did or I did. And I think that that's a good thing. And I think sometimes when you want your people to challenge you in a positive way. I never was the person that liked everybody telling me I was right because I knew I didn't know everything and I knew there's no way that I could be right all the time. And so I don't need to be the emperor with no clothes on. I think millennials have that unique way of having those aha moments like, okay, I understand. That makes sense. Okay, I want to see how these dots connect. And so I think they should never, ever lose that sense of asking the right questions. They just need to understand the audience that they're asking the questions of or the scenario or the setting that they're in when they ask the question. But that aside, their strength is that they ask good questions. They connect dots quicker, faster, better than I think I did or we did, my generation did. And I think that's an asset they should utilize.
Okay. Now, in terms of leadership, the skill and there's will. What do you do when you have a disengaged subordinate or I hire you as a consultant and my number two's disengaged? The skill's there, but the will's not. Is that something salvageable or you generally like to terminate relationships when the will is gone? Walk us through that.
Well, I think the termination part's always your last resort because the one thing I always remind people of, once you have that termination moment, the replacement and then the training and then the efficiency, those three pieces could take you a year to get that back. True. So ideal case is that you can save that individual. And so the first question is, people have a hard time with difficult conversations. That's a difficult conversation. Most people shy away from it. I think you got to go sit down and have that difficult conversation. Hey, Tom, we've got a situation here. I could see you're not engaged, or I can see that you're not comfortable with this. What our steps, what our process are, where we're trying to go, or how we're trying to get there. What is it about this that you don't like? I mean, I think it's important to be polite and respectful, but hit it head on. Why are you disengaged? You're my second in command. I need you to be part of this process, but I can see you're uncomfortable. Why are you uncomfortable? Right? Put it on him or her to be able to answer that question, right? Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you avoid them, they avoid you. Eventually, you're going to get to that crossroads where something's got to give. But not only could it be that they leave or you end up asking them to leave, there's all that lost productivity that happens between the minute that person feels disengaged and maybe 6 or 9 months down the road when it comes to a head. There's 6 or 9 months that the company's suffering and other people in their care are suffering because they're not getting the right direction, they're not getting the right communication. You're really you're causing a lot bigger problem than just that person. So I think being disengaged. So you got to hit it head on, got to have that conversation, and you've got to try to get an understanding of why are you disengaged? What is it about what we're doing that you don't feel good about or want to be part of?
That's actually a good point because having that uncomfortable convo is critical. And in the past, I kind of always fancied myself as a person who I felt was like straightforward and confrontational. But then in retrospect, I was very non-confrontational, and I probably had a lot of business relationships that lasted a lot longer than they should have, and it frankly almost cost me my company. So that makes sense, and that and that is something that there's reasons to hire you, and that's one of them. So let's talk a little bit about the book before we conclude. What's the book about exactly, and where can we get it?
So the book's about this concept of balanced leadership. It's this, as you approach your decisions, right? I think you balance is so important in everything you do. It's, in sports, student body left, student body right never works, right? There was teams that were all offense but no defense, all defense but no offense. It's the balance is what's so important. And so in business, I try to keep this balanced approach, and it's, you think like a customer, you feel like a valued individual, and you act like an owner in all your decisions. And I'll give you a quick example, Tom. A company builds a product, and they're all excited about the product. And so they think like a customer. They understand the customer. They understand why the product's important out there, what the need is. So they're all excited about it. And acting like an owner, of course, there's always a CFO sitting there pounding the calculator. We can make money with the pricing, the margins. But then we missed out on the people. Do we explain to our people why this product's important? What role they play in it? What happens if there's a disconnect? So when we were making decisions, I want to make sure that all three constituents are represented. Our customers are represented, our people, and our share owners. And if you don't make a conscious decision to do that, somebody gets lost in that shuffle or not represented at the table, decision-making table, and eventually you got to come back and say, well, wait a second, the product launch didn't go as well as we wanted because the people on the phone answering the phone on behalf of us really don't understand the product, or the customer doesn't really understand what it's meant to do. So I think that whole concept of this balanced leadership is so important in all you do. So I think that's, kind of what you walk away from, the aha moment of, okay, I've got to stay in balance. I've got to do the right things. I write the book with a lot of stories. Obviously, with my name, Rocky Romanelli, you can figure out it's written kind of in a Italian Catholic vein. So I tell a lot of stories because that's my style of teaching. That's my style of leading and managing. So I think there's a lot of great stories in there. You'll laugh, you'll smile, but hopefully you'll have some good aha moments. The book can be purchased on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, and on my website, www.3 and the word 60 managementservices.com. You can purchase the book there. You can look at some of my YouTube videos. I got about 21 YouTube videos of me speaking. So it's I think I believe that, look, we work hard enough. Why not have a little bit of fun? It'd be nice to be successful and do good things, but have a little fun doing it. So I think the book will be a lot of fun, but you should have some pretty good aha moments, and it should reinforce you doing some good things, but also maybe have you tilt your head a little bit and say, you know what, that's not a bad way for me to look at it. Why not take that approach?
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, listen, Rocky Romanella, thank you very much for being on the podcast. It's definitely not the last we heard of each other because we talked about doing some fun stuff together, and you always have an open platform here on New Theory. And I know millennials that are in the market to grow their business. And one of the things that I'm really kind of getting involved with is learning more about just not being an entrepreneur, but being the CEO and running a business. And I think you can help entrepreneurs develop their business, but then also help them turn into a CEO to maintain a good enterprise. So Rocky Bird, thank you again for being on the show. And this is the New Theory Podcast. Rocky, that was great, buddy. That was really, really good.
Yeah, I hope it helps you grow your business as well. I mean,